It was a bright Saturday morning. The grocery store on Maple Street was busy as usual. People were walking between aisles, shopping for their weekend meals. The sound of carts moving, children laughing, and soft music in the background made everything feel peaceful. But peace never lasts long when a storm is coming. Among the customers was a woman named Karen Miller. She was in her late 40s, wearing large sunglasses and holding her phone in one hand. She walked fast, looking annoyed. Everyone in the neighborhood knew she had a short temper. Small things could make her angry. At the same time, Mr. Johnson, a 72-year-old black man, was shopping quietly. He had a gentle smile and kind eyes. He moved slowly, picking groceries with care, some bread, milk, and vegetables. He lived alone and came to this store every Saturday morning. Everyone liked him. Karen noticed him when they both reached the same aisle, the cereal section. Mr. Johnson stopped his cart to pick his favorite box of oats. Karen came from behind and suddenly said loudly, "Excuse me? You're blocking the way." Mr. Johnson looked up and smiled politely. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll move in a second." Karen didn't wait. Her face turned red. "You people never respect others. You think you own this place?" she shouted. The store became silent. Everyone turned to look. A few customers pulled out their phones, recording what was happening. Mr. Johnson was confused. "I didn't mean to block you, ma'am," he said calmly. "You can pass now." But Karen kept shouting, "Don't talk to me like that. You tried to take my cereal?" Her words were full of anger. Mr. Johnson looked hurt but stayed calm. He whispered, "I didn't take anything from you. Please calm down." Karen stepped closer, her voice rising. "Don't tell me to calm down. People like you always cause trouble." Those words changed everything. The crowd gasped. One woman said softly, "Did she just say that?" Another person whispered, "That's racist." A man nearby started filming. The phone camera focused on Karen's angry face and Mr. Johnson's quiet expression. Karen's hands were shaking. She pushed Mr. Johnson's cart away and shouted again, "Go back to where you belong." The box of cereal fell to the floor. Mr. Johnson stepped back, trying to avoid conflict. He said, "Ma'am, please stop. This is not right." But she didn't stop. Karen suddenly threw the cereal box at him. It hit his arm. The store manager ran over. "Ma'am, that's enough," he said firmly. The manager called security. People were watching, some yelling, others just recording silently. Mr. Johnson looked embarrassed but didn't respond with anger. The manager asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Mr. Johnson nodded slowly. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice trembled a little. Karen crossed her arms. He started it. He was rude. She shouted again, trying to defend herself. The manager replied calmly, "We have cameras, ma'am. Please stop shouting." For a few seconds, the store was quiet again. Only the sound of the air conditioner could be heard. Karen looked around and realized everyone was staring at her. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief. Others whispered words like shameful and unbelievable. But Karen didn't apologize. Instead, she said, "You'll all see. He was the one who attacked me." She stormed out of the store, leaving her cart behind. The automatic doors closed behind her with a loud sound. Everyone turned to Mr. Johnson. He sighed and picked up the cereal box from the floor. "It's okay," he said softly. "Some people just need to learn kindness." The manager offered to call the police, but Mr. Johnson refused. "It's fine," he said. "Let's not make it worse." But someone in the crowd had already uploaded the video. Within minutes, it began spreading online. The title read, "Woman Yells Racist Words at Senior Black Man in Grocery Store. Shocking Video." No one knew it yet. But that video was about to change both of their lives forever. Because sometimes, one moment of anger becomes a lifetime of regret by the next morning. The internet had already found its next storm, the video from the grocery store. Only 1 minute and 42 seconds long had been shared thousands of times overnight. It showed every second of Karen's anger, her shouting, her insult, the cereal box hitting Mr. Johnson. The caption read, "Racist woman attacks senior citizen at grocery store." At first, it was just a few comments. But by noon, the video exploded across social media. News pages, bloggers, and even local TV channels were talking about it. The hashtag Justice for Johnson began trending in the city. People were angry. Some said she should be arrested. Others wrote, "How can someone treat an old man like that?" Mr. Johnson had no idea what was happening. He didn't even use social media. He was at home watering his plants when his neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, came running with her phone. "Mr. Johnson, you're on the internet," she said, showing him the video. He watched quietly. His face showed no anger, only sadness. "I didn't want this," he said softly. "I just wanted peace." Meanwhile, Karen woke up that morning as if it was a normal day. She didn't know that her name and face were already everywhere. She picked up her phone to check her messages and froze. Her inbox was full. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of notifications. Her friend texted, "Karen, what did you do? You're all over Facebook." She clicked the link. Her hands trembled as she watched herself shouting in the video. Her own voice sounded like a stranger's, cold and cruel. "Wait. This is not fair," she whispered. They don't know the full story, but the comments didn't stop. Thousands of strangers were calling her names, posting angry emojis, and sharing her photo. Someone even found her workplace and left negative reviews there. By afternoon, Karen's boss called. His voice was serious. "Karen, we've seen the video. This kind of behavior doesn't fit our company values. We have to suspend you until further notice." Karen tried to explain, but he interrupted. "The video speaks for itself." She hung up the phone, shaking. "This can't be happening," she said, pacing around her living room. Outside her window, 2 reporters were waiting near her car. When she stepped out, microphones pointed at her face. "Karen, do you want to apologize? Did you attack the old man because of his race?" She ran back inside, slamming the door shut. Tears rolled down her face. "Why are they doing this to me? He provoked me first," she said, convincing herself of a lie. But deep inside, guilt was growing quiet. Heavy, painful. Across the city, Mr. Johnson's story was reaching hearts. A local journalist visited him for an interview. He sat in his small living room, a cup of tea in his hands. "I forgive her," he said gently. "Anger doesn't fix hate. Kindness does." That short clip went viral again. People began to admire Mr. Johnson's calm and dignity. Comments flooded in. "This man is pure grace. He's teaching the world how to respond with peace." While one life was being destroyed by anger, another was being lifted by forgiveness. By evening, the police department issued a public statement. "We have received multiple reports and video, evidence regarding an assault incident at Maple Street Grocery. An investigation has begun." Karen saw the news and gasped. "An investigation? Are they going to arrest me?" She turned off her phone, trying to escape the noise. But even the silence felt loud. She couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her own voice shouting in the store. Saw the faces staring, the phone cameras recording. She whispered to herself, it was just one mistake. Why won't it go away? But mistakes caught on camera never disappear. Outside, the world was watching. People demanded justice. Reporters waited for updates. And somewhere deep in her heart, Karen began to realize this wasn't just about a video. It was about the truth she had been running from all her life. The next morning, Karen woke up to a loud knock on her front door. Bang, bang, bang. She froze. Her heart raced. She peeked through the curtain. 2 police officers were standing outside, their car parked on the street. Neighbors had already noticed. Curtains were moving, whispers spreading. Karen's mouth went dry. "No, not today," she murmured. But the knocking continued. She opened the door slowly. "Ma'am," said Officer Daniels politely. "We're from the Mapletown Police Department. We need to ask you a few questions regarding the grocery store incident." Karen's voice shook. "Is this about that video?" "It's all been blown out of proportion." "I didn't mean any harm." The officer nodded calmly. "You can explain everything at the station. Please, come with us." Karen's hands trembled as she grabbed her coat. She noticed a few neighbors watching from their porches. Someone whispered. That's her. The woman from the video. She wanted to shout, "Mind your own business," but she stayed silent. Inside the police car, she stared out the window. The city she knew so well now felt cold and unfamiliar. At the same time, across town, Mr. Johnson sat at his small kitchen table, sipping tea. He had already received a call from the police that morning, too. "Mr. Johnson," said the officer kindly. "We'd like to take your statement." He nodded. "Of course, officer. I'll tell you exactly what happened." When they arrived, he welcomed them in with a smile. Even after everything, his politeness didn't fade. He offered them tea. "I don't want her in trouble," he said softly. "I just want people to learn respect." "That's all," the officer replied. "Sir, what happened to you is wrong. We have to follow the law." At the police station, Karen sat in a small room with white walls and a camera in the corner. Her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. Officer Daniels entered with a folder. He placed it on the table. "Karen Miller, we've received several reports and multiple video clips of the incident." Karen sighed. "It's just one mistake. Everyone is making me look like a monster." The officer opened the folder and turned the screen of a tablet toward her. "Is this you in the video?" Karen looked. Her face, angry and loud, filled the screen. Her voice echoed through the room. "Go back to where you belong." She closed her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Do you admit to pushing his cart and throwing an object at him?" I was just upset. He was blocking the way. It wasn't about his color," she said quickly. The officer watched her quietly. "Then why did you mention people like you?" Karen didn't answer. She looked down, guilt slowly replacing anger. After an hour, the interview ended. "We'll contact you once the investigation moves forward," the officer said. "Until then, please stay available for questioning." Karen nodded weakly. She left the station feeling smaller than ever. Outside, reporters were waiting again. Cameras flashed. "Karen, do you have anything to say to Mr. Johnson? Do you regret your words?" She kept walking, head down, ignoring everyone. Her phone buzzed, another message. This time from her sister. "Karen, Mom saw the video. She's disappointed. You need to fix this." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. But no one could hear. Meanwhile, the grocery store manager gave his statement to the police. He confirmed everything, showing the CCTV footage. The angle clearly showed Karen shouting first, throwing the cereal, pushing the cart. The evidence was undeniable. Within 2 days, the case reached the district attorney's office. They decided to file charges for assault and racial harassment. A notice was sent to Karen's home. When she read it, her hands shook so hard that the paper fell to the floor. She sank into her couch, whispering, "This can't be real. It's just a misunderstanding. It's not who I am." But deep inside, she knew. This was who she had become that day. On the other side of town, Mr. Johnson sat quietly in the park. Children were playing nearby. He looked peaceful, almost as if nothing had happened. A friend asked him, "Aren't you angry after everything?" He smiled gently. "No, anger makes us blind. I want to see clearly." As the sun began to set, the world waited for what would happen next. Would justice finally be served? Or would Karen's excuses save her again? The courthouse was crowded that morning. News reporters, cameramen, and curious faces filled the steps outside. The sound of clicking cameras echoed through the air. It was the day everyone had been waiting for, Karen Miller's first court hearing. Karen arrived in a gray suit, her hair tied back, her face pale. She tried to look confident, but her shaking hands told another story, behind her dark sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen from sleepless nights. As she walked up the courthouse stairs, people whispered, "There she is, the woman from the video." Some pointed their phones at her. Others just stared coldly. Inside, the courtroom was quiet but tense. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Karen sat down beside her lawyer, avoiding eye contact with anyone. On the other side of the room sat Mr. Johnson, calm as always, dressed neatly in a light blue shirt. He didn't look angry. He just looked tired. The judge adjusted his glasses and began. This court will now hear the case of State versus Karen Miller, accused of racial harassment and physical assault. Karen's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client deeply regrets her behavior. It was a moment of stress, not hate. She was overwhelmed that day. The judge nodded slightly, then turned to the prosecutor. You may continue. The prosecutor opened a folder and pressed play on a screen. The video began to play, the same one that millions had already seen online. Karen's voice filled the courtroom. Go back to where you belong. The words echoed off the walls. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Karen looked down, her face red with shame. The prosecutor said, This is not simply a case of bad temper. It is a clear example of hate behavior directed toward an elderly man based on his race. He turned toward Mr. Johnson. Sir, would you please tell the court what happened? Mr. Johnson stood up slowly. His voice was gentle but steady. I went to the store that day for groceries. I didn't want any trouble. When she began shouting, I thought maybe she was just upset. I didn't answer with anger. I didn't want to make things worse. He paused. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because people must learn that words can hurt more than they realize. A quiet murmur spread through the room. Even Karen's lawyer looked moved. Karen glanced at Mr. Johnson for the first time. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to say sorry, but her voice stayed trapped inside. The prosecutor continued. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Multiple witnesses, CCTV footage, and this video prove the aggression. We request the court to hold her accountable. Karen's lawyer tried to defend her again. Your Honor, she has already faced public humiliation. She lost her job, her friends, and her reputation. Isn't that punishment enough? The judge looked down, writing notes. Then he spoke firmly. This is not just about reputation. It's about responsibility. He looked at Karen directly. Mrs. Miller, do you understand what you did? Karen's lips trembled. Yes, Your Honor. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. I never meant to hurt him. The judge nodded slowly. You didn't just hurt him. You hurt everyone who has ever faced unfairness because of their color. You turned your anger into hate. That cannot go unpunished. The room was silent again. Karen's tears finally fell. Mr. Johnson watched her quietly. His expression unreadable. The judge continued. This court finds the defendant, Karen Miller, guilty of harassment and assault. Sentencing will take place next week. The gavel struck the desk. Bang. Karen closed her eyes. It was over. Or maybe it was just beginning. As she walked out of the courtroom, flashes from cameras blinded her. Reporters shouted questions, but she couldn't hear them. Her mind replayed Mr. Johnson's calm words. Words can hurt more than they realize. Outside, Mr. Johnson was surrounded by people thanking him for his bravery. He smiled politely and said, We all just need to treat each other better. Meanwhile, Karen sat alone in her car. The noise of the world faded as she whispered to herself, I wish I could take it all back. Cliffhanger ending. Next week. She would return to hear her sentence, but the punishment waiting for her was not what she expected. 1 week later, the sky above Mapletown Courthouse was dark and cloudy. The air felt heavy, as if the weather itself knew something important was about to happen. Karen Miller stood outside the courthouse again, her lawyer by her side. She wore the same gray suit, but this time she didn't try to hide behind sunglasses. There was no use pretending anymore. Reporters waited near the entrance. Flashing cameras surrounded her as she walked up the steps. Karen, any comments before sentencing? Do you feel sorry for what you did? She said nothing. Her silence was louder than any answer. Inside, the courtroom was full again. People who had followed the case online were watching from the benches. Some came to support Mr. Johnson. Others came just to see justice happen. Mr. Johnson sat quietly near the front. His calm presence filled the room. He looked peaceful, even though the woman who had insulted him sat only a few feet away. The judge entered. This court is now in session for sentencing in the case of State versus Karen Miller. Everyone stood, then sat down. The air was thick with tension. The judge began. Mrs. Miller, Last week you were found guilty of harassment and assault. Today, we decide your punishment." Karen stared down at her hands. Her fingers were cold. Her lawyer whispered, "Stay calm. Whatever happens, accept it." The judge continued, before sentencing, "Does the victim wish to say anything?" Mr. Johnson slowly stood up. His voice was soft, but it carried through the entire room. "Your Honor, I forgive her. I don't want her to suffer. I just want her to understand what pain feels like. Not the kind that bruises the body, but the kind that breaks the heart." Karen looked up, tears filling her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Calm, gentle, and forgiving. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Your words show more strength than anger ever could." He turned to Karen. "Mrs. Miller, stand." Karen stood slowly. Her knees were weak. The judge spoke clearly, every word hitting like a hammer. "This court sentences you to pay a fine of $15,000 incomplete. 6 months of community service at the Maple Senior Care Center. You will also attend mandatory racial sensitivity training for 1 year." A murmur spread through the room. Some thought the punishment was light. Others believed it was fair. The judge added, "Mrs. Miller, your actions were cruel, but this sentence is not just about punishment. It is about learning. You will serve the very people you once disrespected." Karen nodded slowly. Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you, Your Honor," she whispered. As the gavel struck the desk, the crowd began to rise. Cameras flashed again. Reporters shouted questions. But this time, Karen didn't run away. She just walked out quietly, her lawyer following behind. Outside the courthouse, rain began to fall. The sky opened as if washing away the tension in the air. Mr. Johnson stood near the steps under an umbrella. As Karen passed by, their eyes met. For a moment, time stopped. Karen spoke softly, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry." Mr. Johnson smiled faintly. "Do better," he said simply. Then he walked away. That short exchange hit her harder than any fine or punishment. Later that evening, Karen sat alone in her apartment. The walls felt closer, the silence heavier. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. The same face, but not the same person. On the table lay the court papers, the fine notice, and a small card from the senior care center. The thought of working there scared her. "I can't face those people," she whispered. But another voice inside her answered. "You have to." She turned on the TV. Her face appeared again on the evening news. The headline read, "Karen Miller fined and sentenced after racist attack." She watched quietly this time. No excuses.
8.
Only realization for the first time. She truly saw herself, not the victim she once pretended to be, but the person who had crossed a line she could never erase. Outside, the rain kept falling. It sounded almost like forgiveness, cliffhanger ending. Next week, Karen would begin her community service. What she found there would change her more than any punishment ever could. The following Monday morning, Karen Miller stood outside the Maple Senior Care Center, holding a volunteer badge and a nervous heart. The sky was clear, the air calm, but inside her chest, a storm still raged. She looked at the building in front of her. The white walls, the sound of soft laughter from inside, and the slow steps of elderly residents moving around the garden. This was her punishment, but maybe she thought it could also be her chance. A nurse greeted her kindly. "Good morning, Karen. You'll be helping with the breakfast service today?" Karen nodded, forcing a small smile. "Okay," she said quietly. The first few days were hard. The residents didn't know who she was, but the staff did. Some gave her cold looks. Others whispered, "That's the woman from the news." Karen could feel their judgment, but she didn't argue. She kept her head down and worked. She served food, cleaned tables, helped wheelchairs move from one room to another. Each night, she went home exhausted. Her hands sore, but her mind strangely quiet. Then, one morning, something unexpected happened. As she was helping an old lady cut her pancakes, a soft voice behind her said, "You must be new here." Karen turned. It was Mr. Johnson. For a second, she couldn't breathe. You You're here? He smiled gently. I come here twice a week. I play piano for the residents. Karen's throat tightened. I didn't know. He looked at her kindly. Now you do. There was an awkward silence. Then he said, Would you mind helping me carry the music sheets to the hall? She nodded. Together, they walked slowly through the hallway. Karen wanted to speak, but words felt heavy. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry for everything I said. I was wrong. Mr. Johnson smiled, his eyes soft but wise. I forgave you long before you said it. Anger is heavy. I don't carry it. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know how to make things right. You just did, he said simply. That day, when Mr. Johnson sat at the piano and played, Karen stood near the door and listened. The melody was soft, sad but full of peace. The room filled with calmness. The old residents smiled. Some closed their eyes, remembering happier times, for the first time in months. Karen felt something she had forgotten, peace, from that day on. She began to change. Slowly, genuinely. She started talking to the elderly residents. Listening to their stories, laughing with them. She learned how some of them had faced racism years ago, how they forgave and kept living with kindness. Their stories touched her heart deeper than any punishment could. Weeks turned into months. The media moved on to other news, and Karen's name disappeared from headlines. But inside the senior center, she was learning more about humanity than she ever had before. One day, the head nurse called her into the office. Karen, she said, smiling, you've completed your service hours. You're free to go. Karen nodded, but instead of smiling, she looked thoughtful. Can I still come here as a volunteer? The nurse looked surprised. You want to stay? Karen nodded again. Yes, I think I finally understand what it means to care. From that week on, she came back every Saturday, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She helped serve meals, talked to residents, and even started a small garden behind the center. She named it the Kindness Garden. One afternoon, Mr. Johnson visited again. He saw the new flowers and smiled. Looks beautiful, he said. Karen looked at him, tears in her eyes. You taught me how to plant peace, Mr. Johnson. I just gave it roots. He chuckled softly. Then you've learned your lesson. As the sun began to set, Karen stood in the garden, watching the golden light fall over the flowers. The wind was calm. The world felt new. The narrator's voice would close the story. Sometimes, one mistake can destroy your name, but one honest change can rebuild your soul. Hate fades. Kindness grows. Screen fades to black. Soft music plays. Text on screen. Say no to hate. Choose understanding. Everyone deserves respect.